From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Welcome to the Library of Congress. I'm John Cole. I'm the director of the Library of Congress's Center for the Book. That's the office that helps promote books and reading. And the Center for the Book and the Young Reader Center, which is part of the Center for the Book, welcome you to the Library of Congress for our 6th annual Jonah Solkoff Eskin Memorial Program. This very special program honors the memory of Jonah Eskin, son of Barney and Marcia Eskin, who have funded this event. I would like the whole Eskin family to rise, and let's thank them for their generosity. Well, I should have said the 3 members of the Eskin family, but we are so appreciative of their help for this annual talk and program. The talk has morphed into a wonderful program today, and this particular program calls attention to our National Ambassador for Young People's Literature program. This program was initiated in 2008. Gosh, we're going to reminisce about this in a few minutes, but it doesn't seem that far back to me. In collaboration with our partner, the Children's Book Council, which is located in New York, which is the trade foundation for children's book publishers, and they have a foundation which really administers the program for all of us. It's called Every Child a Reader. And of course, the purpose of the program itself is to heighten national awareness about the importance of books for young people and children, and the entire literature body of materials that are available to our young people today. The 3 living ambassadors, yes they are, John Cheska, Catherine Patterson, and Kate DiCamillo. They are going to join me in a conversation. It will be followed, our talk will be followed by a tribute to the 3rd National Ambassador, Walter Dean Myers, the late Walter Dean Myers, and Walter will be remembered by his son, Christopher Myers, himself a writer and an illustrator. We're so pleased. Let's give Christopher, you'll hear from Christopher soon. We are so pleased to have so many young people joining us today from areas throughout the district, Maryland and Virginia. And it's a great pleasure to be able to have more than 200 students from the following schools. When I read your name, please raise your hands. From Washington, D.C., Hyde-Addison Elementary School. Where are you? There we go. You have good seats in the center. Brent Elementary School. Washington Latin Public Charter School. Are you here? Let's hear from you a little bit. A little cheer. There we go. John Eaton Elementary School. All right. And the Alice Deal Middle School. There we go. I'd like to hear again from the Hyde-Addison Elementary School. You weren't in the spirit. There we go. Okay, well, now we've accounted for the DC schools. It looks like the moderator goofed about Virginia schools, but from Maryland, we have Holton-Arms School. And Virginia will be represented the next time around when we have this. The National Ambassador Program provides for a 2-year appointment by the Librarian of Congress. based on recommendations from a selection committee representing many segments of our National Book Community. The selection criteria include the candidates' contributions, proven contributions, to young people's literature and their ability to relate to children. Our partner, as I mentioned already, the Center for the Book and Young Readers Center's partner is the Children's Book Council, and today I also would like you to meet John Coleman, believe it or not, the newly appointed Executive Director of the Children's Book Council. John, would you please stand? Let's give him a hand. This other John will also be part of the ceremony in January when we make the announcement at the Library of Congress of the new ambassador, National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. But that's way in the future. Today we have a rare opportunity. We have brought together the ambassadors who know about our program, have experienced it, and we're going to get their perspective about their experiences, how their role has affected their work and actually affected their lives. Now, if they have any recommendations for improvement, they can talk to me later, okay? But our format is going to be quite simple. We will have roughly a 30-minute conversation with the ambassadors on the stage, after which we will hear from Christopher, the son of our missing ambassador, Walter Dean Myers, who sadly passed away in July 2014, and whose last book, On a Clear Day, was published posthumously in September 2014. After Christopher's remarks, he will join us on the stage, and we'll open up the conversation to our audience for a 20-minute or so Q&A, question and answer session. Because our program is being videotaped for a later webcast on the Library of Congress webpage, we ask that you hold your questions until that period in the program when we ask for them, and that you will wait for someone to give you a microphone so we can record the questions as well as the answers, of course. Finally, if you ask a question, you are giving us your permission to be part of the webcast. And here is the real final. If you've not done so already, please turn off all electronic devices. It's now my pleasure to introduce you a second time to the ambassadors and say a little more about each of them. And I have to be very careful to do this in chronological order. Our first ambassador, as you'll soon see, that there's a great deal of interaction and a little bit of jealousy going on among our ambassadors, and we'll do our best to bring that up, but I'll try to keep it subdued so they don't overdo it. But the first is John Cheska, who served from 2008 to 2009. John wrote his first picture book in 1989, The True Story of the Three Little Pigs, which has sold over, okay, let's hear it. It has sold over 3 million copies and been translated into 14 languages. In addition to many picture books, his series include The Time Warp Trio, Truck Town, Space Heads, and a science series, Frank Einstein. John's memoir, Knucklehead, Tall Tales and which has a subtitle, Tall Tales and Mostly True Stories of Growing Up Cheska, was published in 2008. John is the founder of Guys Read, a web-based literacy program for boys, and its mission is to help boys become motivated, self-motivated, lifelong readers. And John himself is an editor and a contributor to the Guys Read book series. Catherine Patterson Our second national ambassador served from 2010 through 2011. Catherine is a two-time winner of the National Book Award and the Newbery Medal. Catherine's accolades also include the Hans Christian Andersen Medal, the Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award, and the Governor's Award for Excellence in the Arts, which was given to her by her home state of Vermont. And the Library of Congress has given Catherine as part of our bicentennial celebration in the year 2000, she received a Living Legend Award from the Library of Congress. LC employees, wow. Catherine's memoir, which I had the pleasure of just finishing reading, Stories of My Life, was published in 2014, and a film based on her National Book Award-winning novel, The Great Gilly Hopkins, has been made into a film starring Glenn Close, Kathy Bates, and Octavia Spencer. Give her a hand. So she's multimedia. Our current ambassador, Kate DiCamillo, began her... She began her term after Walter Dean Meyer's term. She began in 2014, and it will conclude at the end of this year. Kate has won 2 Newbery Awards, in 2001 for Because of Winn-Dixie, and in 2014 for Flora and Ulysses. She was a finalist for the National Book Award for Young People's Literature in 2001 for The Tiger Rising, and won the Boston Globe Horn Book Award in 2006 for fiction for The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. Her platform, each of the ambassadors has a choice to pick a theme or a platform to emphasize during their 2 years. Her platform has been Stories Connect Us, which stresses the value of character and storyline, which are so appealing in her work. 2 of her books have become films. In 2005, Because of Winn-Dixie was released, and the animated story of the Tales of Despereaux came out in 2008. Along with her many novels, chapter books, and picture books, she plans a yet-to-be-titled novel for readers 10 and older, which is due out in the spring of 2016. A final welcome for all 3 ambassadors. Now, I would like to start actually with our current ambassador, Kate. And Kate, this is a nice question I think that others may have some kinds of thoughts about, but what was it about the ambassadorship that meant the most to you? You were still in it, I realize.
I was going to say, am I done? I have had so many incredible experiences, and I was so intimidated to do this. And I wouldn't say that I was reluctant, but I was afraid because you have to come to the Library of Congress and you get a medal, which John wears all the time still. And I had to wear a dress. And it was
John,
just all, see?
I just happen to have it.
Right?
I'll put it here. There went my second question. But let's go back to Kate. Oh, okay.
But it has been a huge joy to do this because it has put me in so many rooms where I have connected with so many readers and I have seen the power of reading together. So this thing that I went out to promote, that Stories Connect Us, it just instead changed me profoundly and connected me.
You feel it's worked. You feel it's worked for you as the author.
As a reader and as a human being, it has connected me to so many people, and it has been a really powerful thing. So,
John, how about
John didn't learn
a
it.
reward?
I didn't learn a
No.
thing.
Outside of having this wonderful medal, do you want to show the medal?
Well, I think that would be too much to show it too often.
That's right.
But I do wear it down to the deli to get bagels in the morning.
What rewards, looking back,
Other than the bagel?
other than the award and the bagel?
Well, actually, very similar to what Kate experienced.
No,
I was not
Make up
ready
your
for
own
it.
answer.
No, I'm just
That's
going to say the same as you the whole time because I know it'll be poetic. I was just going to say I loved getting all the stuff. Look, starting with the helicopter that you gave
remember,
me.
I promised him a helicopter, and the best I could do was a rather small one that fit in my pocket.
Yeah, it's actually
But
the
John,
reason I said yes.
Do you hear a whir up above anywhere? Maybe there's hope for a national.
Well, I remember the phone call when they asked if, like, someone just called out of the blue and said, "Do you want this thing, the national ambassador? Would you think about it?" And I honestly thought it was a prank call, was my first response. My second response is, "Are you looking for Catherine Patterson?" I actually told them that. I said, "I don't think you want me. I'm the stinky cheese and knucklehead guy." But then I went out and I had that same experience where I went out and talked to kids, and I was promoting trying to engage reluctant readers, and just found out like they weren't actually reluctant, they were just particular readers. And it was an education to me, just
Yeah,
go like,
it's-
oh, I actually got that all wrong. But I was glad to have a sash and my helicopter and my limousine and my
And a
jet
cape.
and
He had a
yacht
cape
and
that
my
he
cape.
used. Right.
and my fanfare.
Okay.
Kids wrote some original music, which I love.
Well, let's come back to that. But Catherine.
What do you mean, let's come back to that? Do you want me to play it? I have it
No,
here.
no. I want to make sure everyone talks
Oh,
a
okay,
little
okay.
bit about the rewards that you.
Who gave a
felt.
better answer, though? Did
And
we
the-
win points?
No, she didn't. No, she didn't.
It's not a point thing.
I'm not keeping
Catherine
score.
hasn't spoken yet.
Oh,
though.
right,
That,
okay.
That'll be the best answer.
So let's go
Oh,
back
okay,
to
yeah.
Catherine's next. So
We'll be quiet then.
no. Just from your perspective, were there surprising rewards that came from this experience?
Well, I think the most fun I had was when I was a prize.
All right.
They offered a prize to the teacher who gave the best best plan of what she would do if the national ambassador would come to her school. And I was won by a very small, not a small teacher, but a second grade teacher in a small school in Maine. And I live in Vermont, so I thought, great, I don't have to go to the ends of the earth to do
Yeah.
this. What I forgot was that it was the middle of winter. And I had a friend driving me, and we wouldn't pay any attention to GPS because we knew better. And then we were on the top of Mount Washington, where you get, and the GPS kept saying, go back, go back. Because we were in the middle of a snowstorm on Mount Washington, and there was no internet or phone reception on this, except the GPS from my car kept saying, go back, go back. We couldn't go back, we couldn't see to go forward. It was a blizzard. In Vermont, it had been beautiful. The minute we got through New Hampshire, I don't want anybody from New Hampshire to get their feelings hurt, but as soon as we got out of New Hampshire into Maine, it was beautiful weather again. And it was a beautiful time at that school. The teacher was so great explaining how books had changed her life as a child, starting out with the little golden books. And she had a copy of the little golden book because her mother would let her brother and her take turns about choosing the little golden book. And she said, but I wasn't very generous because I've scratched out my brother's name and written it. But she had gotten the whole town involved in this celebration of books. And so the parents came, the city fathers came, the school superintendent came, everybody came to the school and did all kinds of book-related things all day. It was just a glorious experience. And I thought, these are the teachers we have out there, and we should honor them and do what we pay them properly, for one thing.
Well, I should explain to the audience that in the 2-year period, with the consent of the individual ambassadors, we try to spread them across the country. And with these three, plus with Walter Dean Myers, we hit some of the spots in the country that normally don't have traveling authors or don't benefit from it. When we started this program, the idea was for certain the ambassador would come to the Library of Congress National Book Festival, which they all have, and for certain they would go to New York for the Children's Book Council to be involved in the launch of Children's Book Week, which, by the way, we are also part of right now, and we're also considering this the Library of Congress launch of the Children's Book Week. And I do recall, in particular, we sent you to some very interesting places. Anyone want to volunteer a place that they will never forget and they would like to go back to? Or you could take it just the first half.
Wow, that's a lot of questions.
I know, that's too much. Let's say an unforgettable place.
Well, I just said Maine.
I'll say Maine. No, you already said that. Kate, you say something.
Oh, I'm going to go to Alaska in June, and I've never been, so I'm really looking forward to that. And we had an amazing time in South Dakota. That was just...
Isn't that quite a book fair?
That was absolutely incredible.
That's the South Dakota Center for the Book,
Yeah.
which is in the Humanities Council, has a knockout book festival. And did you go to which city?
I was in
Deadwood?
Sioux Falls.
Sioux Falls.
And I live in Minnesota, so South Dakota is not that far away. I had never been. And that's not, it's the thing about the ambassador program where it's not where you're normally going. And it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing.
Well, and Chris, I remember your dad went to South Dakota as well, and that turned out to be such a popular spot that we moved two of the ambassadors through. The Children's Book Council does the kind of the booking if an ambassador is willing to go much beyond, and you all have been, for which we're very grateful. But as you know, it's an individual choice how much traveling you can do and want to do. But
Well, I was most amazed by a place that was even closer to home. Went to a place in Manhattan. There was a subway ride away on the Lower East Side where 75% of the kids were homeless. But they were all writing books. And I got to see the books they wrote. And I just actually didn't even read any of my books. We read all of their books. And it was this great moment of like, oh, this is a visit.
Yeah.
This is a visit.
John, I remember your being the first ambassador, we were fussing about how to promote it. And we had at the ALA Midwinter, we actually had a big raffle, and people could put their name of their school and why they wanted to get a visit from the ambassador. Now, we got off of that after that first time.
That was just awkward, yeah. See,
Yeah.
I paved the way for you guys. I went to birthday parties, I think a couple bar mitzvahs. John had me in a parking lot. I opened a bridge, a Costco. They named a school after me, but no one could spell it.
Well, we had a special time with Catherine in Vermont because you remember Guy and I both came up for a special talk that you gave, and having her Vermont connections, it gave the people of Vermont a chance to really participate in a home state that we haven't quite had the chance to do with the rest of you, but it's true. And as this program progresses, and of course the ambassadors are chosen by our jury each year, we're going to become even more national than we've been.
Well, I love the other opportunities we got just with that title, like to be in the New York Times on the paper. Or I went on Martha Stewart for no apparent reason, other than I was the ambassador.
What did they tell you the apparent reason was?
I don't know. I came out of the audience and we made cookies together kind of for a little bit. And then she asked me my tips on how kids could read.
Yeah?
Or she gave me her tips, actually. It's kind of a Martha Stewart thing. I thought closed captioning on TV would be good.
And where was she when she gave you those tips?
Prison.
I set you up for that.
That's the only thing I could think of.
Catherine is going to speak.
Yeah, let Catherine talk.
It's better if Catherine talks.
You see how old I am. The oldest national ambassador, anyhow.
You're the
that
elder
title.
stateswoman is what we call
Elder stateswoman.
it. More mature one.
But the great thing about it was, when I first started in this business, the reporters who had drawn the short straw and would have to come and interview me would always have to explain before they began the interview that they usually interviewed important people.
They're bringing it down a notch
Yeah,
for you.
yeah. And they got the short straw, so they had to do me. And what's the difference between a children's book and a book for adults? And do you do all the pictures and, you know, that sort of thing. And this time, because I'm so old, the reporters had read my books when they were children.
Well,
And the interviews were just wonderful because we had a great time talking about things we all knew about. And I just thought that was the big bonus of being an elderly, a very elderly national ambassador.
you could say, having been around.
Having been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, Kate, did you get on some weird things like radio and television?
I didn't go
saw
on the
you
Martha Stewart show. No, I mean, she's not called me. What weird things?
I don't know. I remember
What
seeing
have
you
you
like,
heard?
I heard a lot of you on the radio. And Desperate Housewives, I thought I saw. Is that not true?
That is not true. I mean, there's, you know, I've done all kinds of things that I would not normally have come my way, I think. And Catherine, I'm not an elder stateswoman, but I've been doing this long enough now that adults appear before me who say, I read your book when I was growing up. And it's one of the most profound things in the world. It is. I don't know if anybody who has read The True Story of the Three Little Pigs when they were a kid and is now an adult. Do we have somebody like that?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was 25 years ago.
It's
somehow.
probably not as profound and moving for him as it is for me.
It's a little profound. That much.
How about the most fun moment? Can a fun moment be separated from some of these more serious moments that...
Oh, yeah. My favorite one was I was traveling with Dave Shannon, who's a very goofy guy who wrote No David, where that's the whole book. He just says No David. So David and I came to a school in California, and just before we walked in the auditorium, the teacher said, they've composed an ambassador fanfare for you. So the kids had made a whole dun 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 dun, 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 and Dave and I walked into this thing, and I got to make Dave my vice ambassador. So he walked in front of me.
What?
It's a vice ambassador. It's in the fine print.
Right.
I made him carry my bag in
charge of vice?
and then I just walked in, and we did it like 3 times because it was so much fun. And then on the way out, that's when Dave explained to kids that you don't just say hello and goodbye to an ambassador. You have to salam. I know you didn't follow up much with that. You just made the kids go like,
Salams.
oh.
Yes, I missed out a lot by not asking for adulation.
Yeah, you just ask. What can go wrong?
Well, Catherine, one of the best moments I remember with you was in Louisiana when we were both at the Louisiana Book Festival. And your husband John was there, and your talk, if you recall, was actually in the state capitol building.
Huey Long's state capitol, wasn't it?
Wow.
Huey Long's state
Huey
capitol.
Long's, where Huey Long was shot.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it was a...
Yeah.
Well, I mean...
No, that was fun, and those people were so great. They invited me back for next year.
I know. Well, they really take their book festival very seriously, and they have a wonderful book festival.
It was.
And that
Do they
was-
have a fanfare? I'm just asking.
No. So, Kate, how about for you?
Probably the most fun has been explaining to people that I'm the ambassador and that John was the first ambassador, and then making fun of John for 5 or 6 minutes without him being anywhere in the state.
Oh, I
It's
hear
like,
later.
It's great. So I just and then after I'm finished with John, then I move on to Catherine and Walter and sing their praises, but I don't sing your praises. So that is
Oh, I know.
like, yeah.
There's this thing called Twitter.
Good. Well, we're going to wrap. We're going to wrap this up in a minute. Well, you reminded me. We still have a special way of hearing about Walter's ambassadorship, and we're going to have a film clip in a second, and we also will have a conversation, including Chris, at which times we can talk a little bit about Walter and some of his contributions. One of them, which I will say just a word about, was by the time Walter became ambassador, he knew what his theme was going to be, and we will hear about it in the film clip, but the idea of a theme is something that the ambassador can use or not use, depending on where their interest in it and the tours that are planned. Another interesting thing that happens is our ambassadors all have distinguished publishers, and during the year or during their ambassadorship, each of them will have books or have books that are being worked on. And so we've worked out a relationship with the publishers who've been very supportive of this whole idea. Yeah. And it's one of the ways I think that we're going to be able to reach even more people and more through future ambassadorships.
Well, it's been nice to have multiple ambassadors now, too.
Well,
we were kind of making it up as we went along, Catherine and I. And now we got a whole gang, or gaggle.
Yeah, we're working
assembly.
Towards it, yeah. We sure are.
Yeah, I felt like one of the things I got the most credit for as ambassador, in fact, I tend to take credit for, is that I was on the committee that chose Walter.
Good move.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the mechanics we've worked out, is that the previous ambassador, and of course, John, you just came out of the cold. So there was no...
Could you rephrase that?
You had no previous ambassador to nominate or endorse you.
That was another
So
positive.
we had to we had to do a lot of careful research. And it was quite a debate over
Mostly
the first
clean,
ambassador, quite a debate. But, you know, we won.
Well, I kind of love that I did get to make it up as I went along. It was just like, I don't know, maybe the ambassador does get to do that.
but I think everybody understands it's be a little hard to follow John.
Yes.
Great. Well, I'm going to move now to the tribute, which we're going to have about Walter Dean Myers. We are honored that Christopher Myers, as you already know, has joined us to pay tribute to his father, Walter Dean Myers. Walter was our third ambassador and served between 2012 and 2013, if you can keep track of all of this. But before Chris comes to the podium, we want to share with you a brief video clip from a July 2012 interview with Walter by Jeffrey Brown of the PBS Newshour. And I think those of us on the stage will just...
We can look right.
Oh, there it is. All right, let's go.
Finally tonight, one man's need to write and a society's need to read. Jeffrey Brown talks with author and advocate Walter Dean Myers.
I was raised where?
In Harlem.
I was raised in Harlem.
And on this day, it was to Harlem that author Walter Dean Myers returned. At 74, Myers is the Library of Congress's National Ambassador for Young People's Literature, the first African American to hold the post. He'd come to his old neighborhood to talk with second graders at St. Aloysius' school about his life as a writer and the need to read, something Myers' own father never learned to do.
How did you feel that you didn't know that your father couldn't read? Did you feel sad?
Actually, it was a funny thing because he had died, and then I discovered he couldn't read. But what happened during his lifetime, he never praised my books. He never said anything good about my books. And so I felt bad about that. I thought he didn't like them. And I was too embarrassed to ask him. So when I found out he couldn't read, I really felt bad because I could have taught him how to read.
So what do you get out of coming to a school like this?
Well, it reminds me of why I'm writing. And
Why you're writing.
Why I'm writing.
Yeah.
You know, it validates what I'm doing, and then I realize that I'm giving the kids something. And what I'm doing is I'm telling them that their lives are worthwhile.
Myers is author of more than 100 novels, biographies, and other books for young adults and children, some of the latter illustrated by his son Christopher. Altogether, his works have sold more than 1 million copies and frequently focus on the gritty side of city life, one that he's lived and knows still from visits to detention centers and prisons, as well as schools around the country. The best-selling novel Monster, for example, is about a Harlem teen jailed as an accomplice in a murder. Hoops features a young basketball player whose coach gambles on their championship game. A new book, Just Right, Here's How, tells of Myers' own troubles in and out of school, how reading and writing saved him, and how they can help others too. You've taken this new role as ambassador for young people's literature, but I read about your life, and it seems as though that's a role that you sort of assigned yourself a long time ago.
Yeah, I've always been interested in people, young people reading, and I see when I go to the juvenile detention centers and prisons, I see people who can't read, and I know that when they leave those prisons and those detention centers, they're not going to be able to make it in our society. I'm also old enough to know that reading has changed.
Changed in what way?
Well, it's changed in that when I was young, there were many, many people who could go out and get a job in a factory, or they could get a job doing some sort of physical work and make a good living, or at least a good enough living to make it. Now you can't do that. Even the job that you think is pretty good today may not be around in 5 years. So you have to be able to read. I mean, it's not like it's a nice thing to do or funny adjunct. It's essential.
Growing up, Myers says he always loved reading, but found few examples of kids like him in books. His own path took many turns. He dropped out of high school, joined the Army, and worked a variety of jobs. Eventually, he started writing in off hours. When you were growing up, and you write about this, the idea of being a writer, that one could make a living and be a writer, was sort of unheard of in your background.
It was completely unheard of, but I liked to write. I couldn't speak well. I went to speech therapy for 10 years, and I was sort of frustrated in that sense. But I found that I love reading, and I liked writing stories. I never thought of making a living at it. I never thought about making a living at writing. I didn't even know for years that people ever even got paid for this, because they don't teach you that in school. They don't say Shakespeare got a check, or Shelley was getting royalties. They don't tell you that. They make it sound as if these guys were geniuses and they were above money.
The speech impediment is also something you write about, being laughed at as a child.
Luckily, I was big.
But that meant what? Getting into fights?
I got into many fights. Yeah. And many I would start the fights because someone would smile. They could be smiling at anything, but I thought you were laughing at me, and so I would be very aggressive.
The young adult novels that you're perhaps best known for now they're tough stuff. I mean, you're looking at some real tough issues in the lives of young people, right?
They're tough issues. I started writing sports. When I was first writing, I was writing sports. I was writing adventure. I was writing mysteries. But then I began to go into the prisons. I began to realize that these guys had families. Who's raising your kids? Then I began going to juvenile prisons. And some of these kids face some very, very tough lives. How do they handle these lives? Do they even know that if their life is bad, that they're still okay? Do they know that? Do they know that someone is thinking the same way that they're thinking?
Of course, a lot of people, I suppose, would think, is this the stuff for young people to read? To read about prison and drugs and poverty. Why not give them something more positive?
Well, the most positive thing I can give them is their own presence, acknowledging them. If I say to a kid, "You are a human being that I understand," I know that I'm not going to excuse if you've done a crime. I'm not going to excuse your crime, but I know where you are coming from. I know that you feel and that you're thinking, and that's just, I need to do that. I need to write that.
And keep writing he will. This spring, Myers published his latest novel, All the Right Stuff, set again in Harlem. It tells the story of a young man trying to find direction in his life. In the meantime, Myers will continue to proselytize in his role as a reading ambassador. His mantra, he says, reading is not optional.
Okay, good.
Christopher Myers is an author and illustrator who won a Caldecott Honor for his illustrations in Harlem, a poem, a book by his father, Walter D. Myers, and a Coretta Scott King Honor for HORSE, Horse for Jazz, and The Black Cat, which he also wrote. In 2015, he won the Coretta King Award for illustration for Firebird by the ballet dancer Misty Copeland. He began his career doing research to help his father, and then went on to illustrate many of his father's books. A brief summary of Walter's career includes over 80 books for children and young adults. Walter received 2 Newbery Honors, 5 Coretta Scott King Awards, and the inaugural Virginia Hamilton Award for Lifetime Achievement. He won the first Michael L. Prince Award, and in 1994 received the American Library Association's Margaret A. Edwards Award for significant and a lasting contribution to young adult literature. Join me in welcoming Christopher Myers to the podium.
Dad was so excited when he got his medal. He was a little bit like you, John. He carried it around. He wore it through the streets of Harlem. And he loved the idea that people would look at him and say, well, what's that guy got a medal on for? You know, he loved that. He took it very seriously. He took it very, very seriously. And I think that in this idea of being the national ambassador for young people's literature, we've talked a lot about young people. We've talked a lot about literature and the awkwardness of ambassador, whatever that means. But that national thing, that thing to be invited to here, the Library of Congress, really stuck with Dad in a certain kind of way. As you see, he thought of himself as like, you know, a young guy from Harlem, that's all of a sudden the nation had recognized him in a certain way, and he thought that was super important. And I thought maybe just in terms of thinking about what it meant for him to be the national ambassador, I wanted to focus on that bit, that nation thing. This country is unique in the world, and everybody says that about their country. I don't care if you're from Zimbabwe or from, you know, Myanmar or whatever. Everyone says, my country's unique. But there is something really unique about this country in that it's founded on words. All the other countries are founded on history. We've been living here quite some time, etc. This country is founded in documents, in words, in declarations, in constitutions, in inalienable rights, in I have not yet begun to fight. And then this country continues to be sustained by words. This is a place of speeches of 77 years ago, of fear itself, of I have a dream, of si se puede, of all of these words. This is what makes this country, is that we are a country of words. And so when we are challenged, when we have problems, we continue to turn toward language, right? So we go to I am woman, hear me roar. We go to by any means necessary. We go to Black Lives Matter. This is how our country functions. We think in terms of language. And so when I look at these guys and I think about what my father did, I realize that these guys are the guys who write the passports. They write the passports for all of you young people to fully enter into this countryness, because they invite people into language. They invite young people into language and to take full part in language. When Pop would go to schools, when I would go to schools with Dad, You know, there are a lot of schools. You know, I've been doing this for a short time. He did it forever. Some of these folks have been doing it for a minute as well. You realize when you go to the school that these kids are looking at you and they're looking to be invited. Schools are even not as poignant or as real as when you go to prisons. When you go to juvenile prisons, here are kids that have been told that they are not part of this, that, or the other thing. They're not able to wear proper shoes, right? Because they can't control what clothing they wear. They're wearing flip-flops often because that's what it means to be in juvenile detention. And what Dad did was he invited those kids to take part in the country of language that that he was so much a member of. The thing that got him out of what could have been a dead-end life as a high school dropout, et cetera, et cetera. Language was his passport. Language is our passport. And so when we're in this repository of the language that makes a nation, it's really exciting to realize that starts really young. It starts with the language that invites us to be in Terabithia or in, or dealing with the Stinky Cheese Man or Winn-Dixie. I'm talking about the books that I read, But that is what the national ambassadorship means. It's this invitation to language. And it's an understanding that language is at the center of what it means to be part of this country in so many ways. So then about a year ago, Dad and I wrote these articles for the Times. Hold on, I got some notes, just making sure. Dad and I wrote some articles for the Times about diversity in young people's literature. And what we found and what we were worried about was how many kids we'd seen throughout the country who were not in their way being invited into language, not being invited into the world that had given us so much. I was raised on books, and when I say raised on books, I was fed on books. That was, every stitch of clothing that I had was made through the hard work of my dad's long fingers at a keyboard. And books have given me so much. And so we realized that there were all these kids in the world and in our country who had not been invited into that nation. And so we think that is one of the things that we want to change in this world, that we're really lucky to have had a platform through Pop's thing about reading is not optional. Like, reading is not something that you want to leave anybody out of. And we're also really lucky that the Library of Congress has worked with a movement that has started after our articles called We Need Diverse Books. And they've decided that they're going to have an award for books that think about diversity, that bring diversity to the fore, that invite more people into language, and they're calling it the Walter.
Yeah.
Which through the center of the book, the Center for the Book, the Young Readers Center, the CBC, not the CBC, sorry, but the point is that next year, March, we're going to be giving out this award, the Walter. And Dad would have been tickled, as he was tickled to be part of you guys, as he was tickled to not be only invited into the language of the country, into the language of books, into the language of our nationhood, but to be lauded, to get a medal that said that he was a member, and to sit with you guys and to say, man, I'm a national ambassador like them. So I just wanted to thank you for that experience in his life, because there's a way in which I think for everybody who makes kids' books, there's an age that you've stopped in your head and that you're always that kid. My dad, he was maybe 10. He was in Harlem It wasn't an easy life. He was afraid of things. He was nervous about things. He didn't know what his future had ahead of him. And so for him to be able to turn to that 10-year-old kid inside him and say, oh, it's going to be good. You're going to be a national ambassador. First of all, that 10-year-old kid didn't believe him, but he got to prove that 10-year-old kid wrong. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was wonderful and just evoked that fourth ambassadorship in ways that are hard to count. It was terrific. And stay tuned, because the first Walter will be presented at the Library of Congress next March.
Sounds good.
That's wonderful.
I don't mean that as a casual comment. It's just that this is a project underway, and it involves many partners and many groups and many organizations, and we're thrilled that it will be presented here at the library and that we can continue to do this kind of very meaningful work. I want to thank all of our distinguished ambassadors, John Cheska, Catherine Patterson, and Kate DiCamillo. Sorry, Kate. Give them a round of applause. And our special guest, Christopher Myers. I want to thank our Center for the Book and our Young Reader Center staff, especially its head, Karen Jaffe. Karen, where are you? There we are. Thank you, Karen. Plus, the volunteers that have helped us put this wonderful event together. A round of applause for them. And also, I have a special announcement for the students in the audience. Today, also, in addition to being our celebration of the ambassadorship and the Library of Congress marking of Children's Book Week, is the kickoff of a special Library of Congress program, a book that shaped me summer reading contest, now in its fourth year for students entering the 5th or 6th grades this fall. We ask that such students write a one-page essay on a book about a book that has made a difference in your life. This contest is administered through local library summer reading programs in Washington, Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, where you students can submit your own essays this summer. Winners receive up to $300 in prizes and present their essay at the Library of Congress National Book Festival over Labor Day weekend on September the 5th at the Walter E. Washington Convention Center. And you can pick up your entry form as you leave today's presentation. Finally, the Children's Book Council has provided a Children's Book Week poster for each of our students. Now, we are going to have a brief question and answer period before we close. We have a few minutes, and I would like to ask for the first question from the audience. And I'm going to be straining over here. Thank you. All the way over.
I would just like to ask all four of you, if there's anything out of all the books that you wrote, is there like a special lesson that you would like everybody who reads all your books to take?
Wow, that's a tough one.
Whoa. So that's a question.
John, do you want John to start with that?
Yes, I think the lesson I want everyone to learn is don't make a little man out of bad-smelling cheese. Not a good idea.
Well, I always feel like that the writer has no right to tell what the lesson is. That all of us, when we read a book, we get to take whatever we want to learn from it. Now, the teacher might tell you there's a certain lesson in the book, and for the test you can say that. But really, in your heart, you get to decide what the lesson of the book is for you. And
Right.
if there's no lesson, fine.
Right, and I think that's true too. And also, what I have found, and probably you have found this, Catherine, and you have found this, Christopher. You have not found this. That writing the book teaches you something as the writer. You learn something that you didn't realize going into it. Maybe even John has learned that too. So yeah.
No, I think that's true because a lot of times you write a book because you have a question.
Right.
Yeah, and not
that you
the
want to
answer.
answer.
Yep.
And you don't have the answer until after you finish the book. But that's your answer.
Right. It's not
And the
everybody
reader,
else's.
it might not be the reader's answer at all.
That's true.
Okay, another question from the audience? All the way in the back, please. Thank you.
So I have a question for Kate.
Okay.
What inspired you to write the Mercy Watson series?
Well, actually, it's a good question to lead from this question, because when you write books for kids, what adults always say to you is, what lesson did you mean to impart here? And the Mercy Watson books are the answer to that question, because nobody ever learns anything in those books. You know, the pig goes right on being a pig. And I had the idea for the story of a pig who lived with two people who were not pigs, and I thought it was really funny, and I kept on playing around with it. But I couldn't make it work until I got a new car, and I was taking a friend to the airport the very first day that I had this new car, and she got into the car with a gigantic piece of toast that had a ton of butter on it, and she started to eat it in my brand new car, spraying greasy crumbs everywhere. And I said, stop that. And instead of her stopping eating the toast, she talked to me about the virtues of toast and how it should be well buttered and how it tasted better if somebody else made it for you. And by the time I got rid of her, I knew what was missing in the book about the pig, which is what the pig loved, which is toast. And that's the deep meaning of those books. Okay, so.
Wow.
Right?
That's a lot.
I have a question for all of you. Do you have a special place where you like to think about what your books are going to be?
Oh, that's a very good question. I want to go first.
No, I want to. No, you go.
Okay, all right. I always have a notebook that I carry with me, and I have that all the time, and I write ideas down in that. But to write, I have to be at my desk facing a blank wall. So that's where the writing actually gets done. You
That's
can write,
weird.
I know, you can write anywhere, can't you?
Yeah, I don't have any special place. I have any place. I'm writing right now. It doesn't look like it, but I am. That's what I tell my editor.
Catherine,
Yeah.
you want to respond to that?
Well, I'm always embarrassed when a real writer like Kate talks about carrying her notebook around and writing down ideas, because often when I go to school, people say, don't you keep a notebook with your ideas? And I say, no. And they say, don't you keep a journal? And I say, no.
Don't let out all your secrets.
Well, by the time we're through, I said, let's just face it. Whatever real writers do, I don't. Yeah, I have a place to write. Yeah. And right now it's covered with stuff that has nothing to do with what I'm trying to write. So I think I've got to go home and clean up and get to work.
Christopher, do you want to respond about your working habits?
Well, in terms of places, I travel a lot, and that often informs what I'm working on. So I was just in Italy, where I got a grant to have a studio there. It was very inspirational. Italian food I have found is quite inspirational.
Yeah.
Why are all your books about spaghetti, though?
Right. Also, Vietnamese food is very inspirational, so I was there for a little while. Food in Brooklyn is food, I think. Food. You know, that's also an essential part of my creative process.
Lunch.
But I think Christopher should talk about his new book, because I think that's great for kids to know about.
Well, I mean, I just finished a book called My Pen, that, and And it's about the idea that I do carry a notebook and a pen with me. Where's yours? It's not on stage with you, right?
It's in my purse.
It's far away.
Yeah.
If you had an idea now, I would take it and write it down.
I'm writing it down up here.
But, and I'm interested in the idea that, you know, all you really need, I was in a prison with Pop, and the guy looked at me and looked at Dad and goes, you know, what do you got? You guys don't dress particularly well. You don't have nice watches or anything. Do you live in a mansion? And I was like, I live in Brooklyn in an apartment. And they were like, well, what kind of power do you have? And I was like, I'm really, really good with a pen. And so as long as I have a pen, no matter where I am, I can do something, you know, and be it drawing. And I'm also beginning to realize just how much around us is all pens, you know, from how the podium's designed to, you know, your clothing. There's somebody with a pen somewhere who drew that, you know, and so that's this idea of as long as you have a pen, no matter where you are, you got something.
Nice.
It's a great book.
Go here, yeah. Right in the front, thank you.
This is for all you guys. How did it feel when you wrote your first book?
Could you repeat the question once for us?
How did it feel when you wrote your first book?
How did you feel it? How did you feel when you wrote your first book? We're gonna
Who wants to go first?
round robin.
Catherine, tell us.
Well, it's been so long ago.
I was going to say, I couldn't remember.
I had written a book just because I'd been asked to write a book by the church. But my first novel, I had gone for 7 years and sold practically nothing. One short story and the magazine folded. But I decided if I could write a story a week, none of which were selling, I could write a chapter a week. And even if nobody ever bought it or published it, I would have accomplished something by the end of the year. So I set myself the task of writing a chapter a week. I know that that book only has 14 chapters and a year has 52 weeks. But anyhow, by the end of the year, I had a rough draft of a book. And eventually sold, and it became my first novel. So when people say they don't have time to write, and when they get old and don't have anything else to do, they'll write, I think, maybe you have more time than you think, but you just don't have the nerve. Because I think writing takes a lot of nerve, don't you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I remember writing Three Little Pigs sitting in an office in New York, and nobody liked it. Everyone thought it was too stupid. Either that or they thought kids wouldn't understand it. And I thought, no, I think they get it. So it took like a year of people saying, no, this is too weird. And then I met the illustrator. He did some drawings. They said, now it's really too weird. Now we're really not going to publish it. So it's a sad memory. Until it came out and sold a bunch.
A million books later.
Yeah.
My first book was because of Winn-Dixie, and I was working in a book warehouse, and
you didn't even have shoes, right?
I didn't even have shoes. I read your dad in that book warehouse. I was assigned to the third floor. It was all children's books. I read Catherine Patterson in that book warehouse. I walked past John's books all the time.
Weird.
But really, no, I got to study everybody, and then Winn-Dixie was going to join the ranks of these people that I loved and knew through their books, and it was just the most amazing thing in the world. And it still, it surprises me every day. I don't know if y'all feel that way.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, because you grew up with your dad doing it, so it doesn't.
Yeah, so for my first book, I'd seen my dad publishing books, and then I'd illustrated a book. And the first one I wrote, I was like, the first one I illustrated one with him, and then he got half the money because he did the words, and then I did. So I said, I can cut you out. And so when I published my first book, I was excited because I was like, see, I don't even need this. I mean, like this whole half the money, I like all of it. That's much better for me.
This is such an uplifting question.
Well, this wasn't a question, but I can remember when I read Kate's first book, because somebody gave it to me and they said, you're going to love this book. And I read this book and I thought, this woman is kin to me. I want to meet her.
Oh, it still makes me cry when you say that. Yeah.
Oh. All right, we'll go to this question over here.
Well, I have this for K.D. Camillo.
Yes.
What inspired you to make Flora and Ulysses? Because I'm still confused about how you thought of a squirrel lifting up a 100 or 200-pound vacuum cleaner.
He's a superhero. So it is always very complicated to trace these ideas back. But I have those notebooks that Catherine doesn't have and that John doesn't have. And I could go back and trace how it all happened. And my mom, who passed away in 2009, she had a vacuum cleaner. An Electrolux vacuum cleaner, and she thought it was the most incredible vacuum cleaner. And in the last year of her life, she talked to me a lot about what was going to happen to the vacuum cleaner after she was gone. And I kept on saying, I'll take the vacuum cleaner, don't worry about it. So she passed away. I did take the vacuum cleaner as I promised her I would. However, she had a cat, the world's most evil cat, named Mildew. And I'm allergic to cats. Are you following this? Because it all is going to come together. Okay, so I'm allergic to cats, so I couldn't put the vacuum cleaner in the house because I needed to detoxify it. So it was in the garage. Every time I pulled into the garage, I would see the vacuum cleaner. It would make me sad. It would make me miss my mother. So there's the vacuum cleaner. Then the spring after she died, there was a squirrel dying on my front steps. Like draped across it in a very dramatic fashion, obviously not going to get well. I called one of my best friends who lives a block and a half away. She's asked me not to say her name anymore. She really is the sweetest and gentlest of all of my friends. But what she said when I told her there was a squirrel dying on my front steps was, "Do you have a shovel?" It's like, well, yeah, I've got a shovel. She said, "Get the shovel, get an old T-shirt, I'll come over there and whack him over the head." So I'm on the cell phone with her, very close to the squirrel, and I start backing up because I don't want him to hear what she just said. Right? I mean, it's like I go around the side door, go in, look out the front door. Guess what? The squirrel's gone because he did hear. And he thought, that is not the death for me. I'm going to go someplace else and die a more quiet, dignified death. So I started to think about ways to save a squirrel, and I've got this vacuum cleaner, and I put the two things together, and there you go. Now you understand.
All right, we'll go to the back up here, please.
I need a notebook.
I'm gonna start writing.
How do you guys feel when you win an award?
I want to go first with that one because I was a kid who was lucky enough to go to the library twice a week. There was a spin rack in the library that had all the Newbery Yearling paperbacks. Raise your hand if you're old enough to remember those. They were all like, and I knew that the Newbery medal on a book meant that it was going to be a book that I loved. And to think that would be on something that I wrote is something that I still cannot get over, you know.
Oh, it's still great just to win awards. Like when I hear about a new award like the Walter, I want to win it. Like it's never been around before, but now I got a new one. I got a lot of things I want, but let's not get into that. How about you, Catherine?
Well, I guess
you got a slew of them. You got like the hands.
Well, the first award I won was the National Book Award for the Master Puppeteer, and
that's a nice way to start.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Don't start small, right? No state awards.
Well, it was kind of weird because in those days they warned you a few days ahead. Now you have to go to the thing and they call out your name like the Academy Awards, which is horrible. But anyhow, they called to say I was nominated, but don't worry because that's a great honor to be nominated. Don't worry about winning the award. And they said, but you will have to make a speech, so you should write a speech. And I said, how am I going to write a speech for an award that I'm not going to win? I mean,
I have those already. I got a bunch.
But then they called and said I'd won, but I had just heard that my daughter had been in a bike accident, so I wasn't really worried about writing a speech that had to be done by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I was worried about finding my daughter and making sure she was all right. So I jump in the car to go to where she is, and she's fine. Her bike is not rideable. So I get all the kids home, and I say, if you'll give me quiet, I've got to write 500 deathless words. And they gave me quiet, and I wrote 500 deathless words, and then I took it. My husband, of course, was out of town. He was always out of town when crisis occurs.
Husbands, they're like that.
And I took them to this restaurant, and the next thing I knew, all of the wait staff had gathered around the table singing, "For She's a Jolly Good Fellow." And then they said, "Congratulations to Catherine Patterson, the greatest children's writer in the world." And my kids were beaming, and I was bright red. But anyhow, it was a great occasion.
In general, it's good to win awards, I think. So I think that's what we're all saying. It's nice.
That's a good summary.
Feels good. Feels good.
I should mention that in Catherine's part, I mentioned that I just finished reading her new book, Stories of My Life, and she talks about each of the awards and the story behind them in the way you just did for that first one. And it's really a wonderful
book of them.
Wonderful stories. That's a footnote for you about awards. We're going to move up to this one, please.
I have a question for all you. What was your favorite book when you was a kid?
Favorite book when you were a kid?
Favorite book? I had a lot of favorite books. I read anything that had myths and legends in it. I read not nearly enough of my father's work because it was always around and he was there. Like, if you know, do you really care? Of those of us who like live with somebody who's working, you don't really care about their job. You're like, that's nice that you're working. That's cool. I would like to read something that's, comic books were big with me. But at the same time, I read, what was the book with that had the Japanese dolls on the cover?
That was Master Puppeteer.
Master Puppeteer. My father brought that home for me, and I liked that, and he was mad at me that I liked that. He was mad at me that I liked it, because he's like, why haven't you read my books? I was like, but this one's got these Japanese dolls on the cover. It's cool, man. You do a book with Japanese dolls on the cover, and I got you.
Revenge reading. Wow. I loved Because of Winn-Dixie when I was little. No, my favorite book was The Carrot Seed. Have you ever read that?
Yeah.
And the more I thought about it, the more I realized where my whole life attitude was formed. Like, this little guy finds a carrot seed and everyone tells him it's not going to grow up, don't bother. But he plants it and they still say, don't bother, it's not going to grow up. But he takes care of it and they say, don't bother. And the last page is he's got a huge carrot in a wheelbarrow. And that's the whole book. The story.
For me, I love to read everything until I got to Black Beauty. How many of y'all have read Black Beauty?
Ooh, yeah.
That book upset me so much that I didn't want to read any book that had an animal on the cover after that. So I did not read Charlotte's Web until I was 30 years old. Every week I would look at Wilbur.
You skipped all animal books?
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of them.
Right, it sure is.
Because they all pretty much have the same plot. Right?
Somebody's gonna die.
An animal on the cover.
Right.
I don't feel good for that animal later.
Right. And Wilbur looks so worried on the cover of Charlotte's Web. It's like something terrible is going to happen to this pig. I don't want anything to do with it. So
I'm thinking back now. Yeah, Old Yeller.
Yeah, you know.
Old Yeller,
good.
where the red fern grows.
Yeah.
See, put an animal on the cover. That animal's not lasting long.
And the irony is, I, as a child, would not read any of the books that my adult self has written because I've got an animal on the cover of everything I've done. So that's some kind of weird.
You're very conflicted.
Not about you, I'm not.
Read The Carrot Seed.
All right, let's go to this question.
I have a question for John. On the cover of the book, it says mostly true stories. How many of the stories aren't true? And what are they?
Wow. I want to answer for him. Look at him.
think
How many, and you've been listening to him, how many of those stories do you think are true? goose eggs.
No, that's not true. Most of them are. Because we had 6 boys and a cat and a dog and some goldfish and like little brothers that threw up on each other.
And nut rolls.
Yeah, and we accidentally did pee on Greg. Wasn't our fault. And on the electric heater. Those are all real. Yeah. But don't try that either. Yeah, I would say 98%. Are true.
You say 90 or 98?
98. Yeah, I'm sticking with 98.
I'm sticking with 0.
All right. We're going to go back over here. Thank you.
So this is for all of you. What book have you written that most relates to your life?
I'm sorry, would you repeat the question once?
Wow.
Oh, okay. So what book have you written that most relates to your life?
Most relates to your life.
If you have one.
Well, I guess the book that I wrote that out of something that had happened in my family was Bridge to Terabithia, because my son's best friend had been killed by lightning, and I had to somehow make sense out of something that didn't make sense. Yeah. The book that's most like me probably is Come Sing Jimmy Joe, because I'm a shy show-off.
Yeah.
Which people don't believe I'm shy until they see me.
Me too.
In a small group. But, who can be shy sitting next to John Sheska? Come on.
This is the last.
I think the book out of my life is the true story of the 3 little pigs.
I knew you were.
Because it's really, honestly, not my fault. Like, ever. Whatever the accusation.
For me, I don't know. I think it's probably what's coming next, the novel that is coming out in next year. But I think that a lot. The thing that I've just finished is the thing that most accurately sums me up. But then the next thing comes along. What about you, Chris?
They're saying it's the Penn book, I feel like, is really, that is it. Until the next book, and then the next book will be it. But right now, I really do see everything as like, everyone up here is a pen. Like, I feel everything is about pens, and I'm pen-oriented. Years ago, I did a book about, Harlem, and I was like, everybody's from Harlem. We're not, but.
With a pen.
Yes.
Well, that was the final question and answer, and I have a couple more announcements before we say a final thank you to our participants. First of all, when you go out, in addition to the contest that I talked about a little earlier and picking up the forms, the Children's Book Council has provided a Children's Book Week poster for each of our students as you leave the auditorium. And if you'll remember, that is one of the many purposes of this wonderful event that we've enjoyed together. This is a full week, and I know that the Children's Book Council has gone national with Children's Book Week in a number of new ways, and are reaching across the nation and have really strengthened Children's Book Week in the few years that we've worked together on this. Finally, when we leave, we need to leave for logistical reasons, exit by school, and I'm going to announce the order, and it will be the order that in which I introduced everyone. It will be, but I will give you the word when you are to get up and for that school to leave. We'll start with Hyde-Addison, then Holton-Arms, Brent, John Eaton, Washington Latin, and Alice Deal. But finally, I want to one more time call for a round of gratitude and applause. Well, thank you. I want to say that when we began this, I said it was going to be a very special program, and it turned out to be, and it's because each of the ambassadors plus Christopher have really shared themselves with us in terms of their writing and their ambitions, and especially about the importance of the work that they do
not just for us, but also in some ways for themselves. I think it's rare that you have such an articulate, caring group of writers who have such a broad perspective, on the work that they're doing and how important that work is, in this case, for the entire world of young people's literature. So we're pleased you were here, and we just want to express the gratitude for our writers, for the true value of what they do, that we appreciate it, and we really appreciate them taking the effort to spend their time not only here, but as national ambassadors for young people's literature. So final round, and then I'm going to announce the...
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.